welcome to you all at home.
You've still got a chance to win this race, haven't you?
Just drive. I wanna be the only one to make it through the
Hey guys, Harrison Warren back once again with a brand new video for you, and welcome to episode 11, I think now, of season 2 of Dre TV, the series where we talk some F1 stuff with some F1 2014 in the background. And this is a kind of a different video for me because this is the first race I've ever done with manual gears on the car. In my continuing attempt to try and be a slightly better Formula 1 gameplay, you could say, I'm slowly starting to turn the assists off and starting to try and get a little bit faster, and it actually worked out quite nicely in this video, as you'll see. As it goes on, I think I have quite a good result, given it's my first time around using manual gears and in a quite weak car, to be honest with you. So, hope you guys enjoy that in the background. While, in the meantime, I'm going to talk about the new FIA Super License rulings. In case you haven't seen it in the last couple of days, the FIA made a big announcement saying they were revamping the criteria for a Formula 1 driver or a driver to be given a super license to be eligible to compete in Formula 1. The FIA would never admit this, but I suspect this is a direct response to Max Verstappen. For those guys who don't know, Max Verstappen is 17 years old and he'll be debuting in Formula 1 next year with the Toro Rosso team, which was obviously a big shock because he'll be by far and away the youngest driver ever to take part in Formula 1, beating Sebastian Vettel's record and Jaime Alguersuari's record of youngest driver in a race. I think they were both 19 when they made their debut, so Verstappen will be less than 17 and a half years old by the time that rolls around. And obviously, they've already announced one rule, which was a couple of months ago, where they said, only 18-year-olds are going to be getting super licenses from now on in, which definitely seemed like a response to Verstappen. This one seems to be a continuation of that, essentially, where they've changed the system around. And I thought it'll make for an interesting video to break it down, into bite-sized chunks and, see what's what, and hopefully you'll have a rough idea of, what me and my Motorsport 101 co-host Ryan King call the Verstappen law, to make sure that a driver like Verstappen never makes it into F1 again, basically. So, a couple of things to get out of the way. First of all, like I said, you've got to be over the age of 18 now to be eligible. Second of all, you have to have passed a motorsport test to get in, which I'm sure is minor, and you have to have done at least 2 years in any form of single-seat racing. So you essentially can't do what Max did. You can't just do 1 year, then jump up to Formula 1. You've got to do at least 2 years in a single-seat open-wheeled formula as well. So, without further ado, I'm going to put the scoring system on the screen now, hopefully, and hopefully you'll be able to wrap around the idea of how many points are given out for what discipline and what you get for finishing where. In case you didn't know, you have to have earned 40 points over a 3-year period to be eligible for a super license. So, essentially, as you can see, the future FIA Formula 2 Championship is worth 60. If you win it, the GP2 Series is worth 50. The FIA European Formula 3 Championship, which what Max actually raced in this last year, is worth 40. And so on and so forth as you go down. Obviously, the less reputable disciplines obviously reward less points and whatnot. So, I know that might be a lot to take in, so I'll keep it on the screen for a little bit more while I break over some of the points which I think are the most interesting to discuss. Obviously, one sticks out right at the top, and that's the future FIA Formula 2 Championship, which, as you can probably guess by the name, doesn't actually exist yet, which is interesting to say the least, because obviously we need some context here, because for me, this is the biggest question mark over this entire new system, as whether it's going to work or not, and that's the structure and the format of Formula 2. We don't know anything really about this series just yet. I think Stefano Domenicali is in charge of it at the moment, but we don't know anything about the cars, the drivers, the structure, the rules, the format, etc. I'm hoping it ends up being something like guys like who are test drivers, like a John Eric Verner and Esteban Gutierrez, or younger drivers who are in and around the mix, maybe have had an F1 one already, and need to keep themselves busy by being in Formula 2, like maybe a Sam Bird or a Jaime Alguersuari or a Sebastian Buemi, for instance, can come into that series and hopefully keep themselves fresh, keep themselves racing, and keeps them eligible to be able to come back into F1, because most of the time we know these drivers are good enough to be in Formula 1. It's just politics, pay drivers, and whatnot means many guys miss out. Like I said, like an Alguersuari, like a Buemi, who were unceremoniously dumped from the Toro Rosso Red Bull driver program, so to speak, and maybe slightly unfairly, given both of them were starting to actually show signs of improvement before they were let go. So if it's just going to be a big pool of young drivers, and that's not going to help, because it's going to automatically weaken all the other series. But if it's a series where experienced guys who've maybe been there once before, if you get a good blend of talent, similar to Formula E, I think you're onto a winner with that one, but obviously we'll have to wait and see on that one. My other big concern with the scoring system, as you can see, is that IndyCar is only worth 40 points. Now, I think that's a bit silly. IndyCar is clearly the closest thing we have to Formula 1 right now. I'm not the biggest IndyCar fan in the world, but I do know of the driver quality that's in it. I know that a lot of drivers are heading to IndyCar now because Formula 1 seats are at a premium these days. And the talent field is getting better and better. We got the Ryan Hunter-Reys of the world, Connor Daly's looking to get in, and etc, etc. So more and more talent is looking towards IndyCar as a viable Formula 1 alternative. IndyCars can go at 245 miles an hour, and on top of that, a lot of road courses are very difficult. The cars are extremely powerful, extremely fast. Technologically speaking, they're the closest we've got to Formula 1 at the moment. So why is it only worth 40? I think that's a little bit on the harsh side. I think it should be worth 50 or 60 points, maybe even a little bit more, so that guys who are contenders, if you're an IndyCar contender, you're probably really good in terms of driving ability. I mean, look at Juan Pablo Montoya, who made the jump. It wasn't that long ago where Nigel Mansell was competing in both Formula 1 and IndyCar at the same time, or around the same time. So I think IndyCar should be worth a little bit more than 40, personally. Okay, another thing people have mentioned is where's Formula E, and it's a similar ball game to FIA's Formula 2 on there. I don't think it should be on the list right now because Formula E is still an up-and-coming series. We don't know anything about driver structures, whether they're going to be set in stone. We've had a lot of replacements already this year. We've had obviously Marco Andretti filling in for Frank Montagny popping a molly. You've got John-Eric Verne, who's come in now, Salvador Duran at the Amna Naguri team, etc, etc. That league's already had 14 drivers in it who have taken part in Formula 1 at some point in their careers. So maybe it's not the best message to say Formula E is the real, place to go for points, etc. It's still an up-and-coming series, and I think it should be set in stone before you start giving out a point value. And even so, what point value would you give Formula E? Because it's kind of in the middle of nowhere in terms of, competitiveness. How would you compare it to a Formula Renault 3.5 or a GP2 or a GP3? It's a bit difficult on that one, so it's probably for the best they didn't feature it right now, because I guarantee if you did feature that and you gave it a point value, people would start questioning that, because I know a lot of people who are still very skeptical over Formula E as a series at the moment. Now, here's another big one. Why is Formula Renault 3.5 only worth 30? And a lot of people have used this, saying, oh, well, Daniel Ricciardo wouldn't have made it in with this system. Or, Sebastian Vettel had success in Formula Renault, and Kevin Magnussen, and etc, etc. And obviously now Carlos Sainz Jr., who just won that series and is going to Formula 1 this year with the Toro Rosso team as Verstappen's teammate. My response to that is, listen people, you're trying to enter the FIA Formula 1 World Championship. Formula Renault 3.5 is a direct rival feeder series. Why would the FIA give them a ton of points? Because it dilutes... Trust me, if you gave Formula Renault 50, 60 points, you'd be diluting your own series in GP2, GP3, and obviously Formula 2 if that becomes a thing. Which it probably will be at some point. But... a lot of people have come out saying, oh, well, this is just a trick for FIA to be more corrupt with their drivers. Well, duh, they're a business. What did you expect? All sport is business, and having potentially top drivers go to Formula Renault is not good for the FIA. They want them in their own series where they can get more points. So it makes sense. Eliminate the competition. Duh. Like, you don't need me to explain that. Like, I know it's not fair or anything, but Formula Renault decided to compete as a rival series to the FIA. That's their problem, and they've got to deal with that now. The fact it's still got 30 points is still actually quite decent. If you're a decent driver in Formula Renault 3.5 and you're a title contender, you should still get to 40 points, no problem. If you're a runner-up twice, that's 40 points. If you win the title, you'll probably get in. So, like, I don't see what the problem is there. 30 is still a decent maximum total. So for me, I don't see what the problem is, personally. It makes sense that the FIA did that. The fact they even gave them 30, I thought, was a little bit surprising. I thought it would be less than that. So, good for them. And this is the problem with the series. If you gave Formula Renault 3.5 more points, I think the problem with that would be you're making the system too top heavy. You don't want to have 50 drivers getting super licenses at the same time. Otherwise, you're going to have the same problems the current system has now, where it becomes a bidding war because everybody's got super licenses these days, which is exactly what's going on right now in 2015. Guys like Marcus Ericsson, guys like Esteban Gutierrez, who are well sponsored, have a license, are eligible, and of course, struggling teams like Sauber, Cater and Mauritia, etc., are going to pick them up because it's in their best interest to do that, because they've got to stay afloat as a team. So, if you made Formula Renault 3.5, you'd have to be giving up another series. Because I think another small problem is that if you have Formula 2 being worth 60, GP2 being worth 50, GP3 being worth 30, Formula Renault being worth 30, 40, 50 maybe, it's going to be a little bit too top heavy, and you're going to have like 10, 12 new drivers a year being eligible, and maybe that's not a good idea either. Because I think the biggest argument people have made against this, is, as I mentioned before, is the drivers that wouldn't have made it in if this system had existed today, and I think that's a bullshit argument. Guys like Will Buxton have brought this up, guys like Martin Brundle have brought this up, and I think it's a very silly point. And I say this because, people saying like, Ayrton Senna would never have made it in on this system. Hello, this is Ayrton Senna we're talking about here. Arguably the greatest driver of all time, a freak talent who won the British Formula 3 Championship as well, which was the best of its kind in Europe. So, you really think he wouldn't have made it in eventually? Michael Schumacher, again, came in from sports car racing. Kimi Räikkönen was mentioned as well. Räikkönen was a freak before he got into Formula 1. I think he only had like 21 single-seat races before he even entered F1. Räikkönen would have made it in anyway, no problem. Like, the sport is not what it was in 1985, 1995, or even 2005 when it came to talent acquisition and whatnot. It's a silly argument to say that Schumacher would not have made it in. Well, let's be real here. Schumacher debuted back in the early 90s. The sport wasn't the same as it is then, where paid drivers were a bigger priority. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, you're using yesterday's barometer to compare to today, and it's just kind of stupid, because, in my opinion, the guys who were really good are going to make it in anyway. And overall, for me, I really like this new system. Well, I think a lot of people on the internet bitch and moan when pay drivers become a thing. Like, we've all loved to bash Pastor over the years. Marcus Ericsson's been universally mocked for being a pay driver. Same with Max Chilton. Same with Esteban Gutierrez, etc., etc. And now this is a system that rewards you on merit. This should get rid of the pay drivers, because you've now got to be a pretty darn good driver to get 40 points over 3 years to be eligible for a license. Like, there's not that many 40-point opportunities on the board. Like IndyCar, you got to go to the World Endurance Championship, you got to win the European Championship in Formula 3 to be automatically eligible, or you've got to be a top title contender for a number of years in a decent series to be eligible. And shouldn't that be the point? Like, shouldn't we be rewarding merit over than money? Like, so overall, I think this system is a good thing. I think we've taken 3 steps forward and maybe 1 step back. And I think the system needs a little bit of refining, but again, it's a new system. Of course it's going to need refining. It's not going to be perfect in the first draft. And it doesn't even get introduced until 2016. So, to me, there's time to work on it and improve it. And I think a lot of people are focusing on the one step back, while we should be focusing on the 3 steps forward, because I think this is definitely a more progressive, really good system that, like I said, rewards merit over money. But let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your opinion on the matter. As always, I'll leave a link to everything in the description. Check it out as well. We've put the iTunes podcast link up there as well now, as well as all the other stuff you need. So hopefully you guys will get something out of that. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I've been Harrison101. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time. Sayonara.